Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Ms. Foley, did Alvin Bragg's indictment actually articulate a provable felony offense?
Did the indictment?
Mm-hmm. Yes,
no.
ma'am.
I mean, the indictment was about as generic as you could get. I mean, one of the primary elements is the intent to commit another crime. The indictment said nothing about that. And he provided a statement of facts that accompanied the indictment. That also said nothing about what that other crime was.
Why do you suppose that was, that it omitted that?
I think to the extent that you want to convict someone, you hide the ball, you obfuscate, and that keeps the defense counsel on their toes. They don't know what evidence to put forward to the jury. It's an ever-moving target. It makes it very difficult to defend if you're a defense counsel.
And how does that impact the jury instructions in the end? You talked about that, but I want you to discuss that again.
Yeah, well, you don't know till the end, if you don't know till the end, what exactly the first predicate is. You don't know who to put on the stand. You don't know what evidence to put forward. The only reason he tried to bring forward Brad Smith, for example, the former FEC chair, was because Alvin Bragg kept hinting that maybe one of the bases for the first predicate was the FECA violation. And so he kind of knew that, so he tried to get a witness to say something about that, and he was denied. So it was just an exercise in futility for Trump to try to defend this case, because it wasn't clear exactly what he was being charged with.
Thank you for that. And just changing gears a little bit, who's Matthew Colangelo?
Well, he was, the number 3 guy in the Department of Justice?
Correct. And what is his current title? What does he do now?
He's on Alvin Bragg's prosecutorial team. I'm not sure exactly what his title is.
A state DA.
Yeah, state DA. That's correct.
Is that unusual to see somebody go from, the number 3 position at the Department of Justice to a state district attorney?
I know some other members of the committee have suggested, well, you do it out of the goodness of your heart because you're a public servant and all that jazz. And I'm sure that's true, but at the same time, it's exceedingly unusual for that to happen, for you to take a downward movement in your career. And because of the unusual nature of it, it makes you go,
Yeah, I think it raises questions, and I think the American people see that. I think polling consistently shows that the American people believe that the prosecution of President Trump in Manhattan was more about politics than it was about some violation of the law. And of course, we've seen that, right? I mean, District Attorney Bragg campaigned on going after a certain individual, not some violation of the crime. It was identify the man and then go after the crime. And I think that's incredibly alarming just for the justice system broadly. Is it fair to say that as a former DOJ official that Mr. Colangelo would have high-level contacts within the Biden Department of Justice?
Oh, undoubtedly. And I hope if he does actually show up before the committee that there are a lot of vigorous questions about that.
If there was or continues to be some sort of coordination between the Department of Justice, based on those contacts, and the District Attorney's Office, what effect would that have on a case?
It would be a tremendous effect. I mean, it would be a huge advantage for someone from the Department of Justice to sort of implant themselves in a state prosecution, which involves state crimes, obviously, only, because it would benefit his former boss, the person for whom he worked. And, again, it would just sort of re-emphasize the impression, the suspicion that this is a politically motivated prosecution.
I think that's why it's important, too. Let me, are you aware that members of Congress have the ability to remove cases from state court to federal court?
Yeah.
Judges, same thing. There's a bill that I've introduced called the No More Political Prosecutions Act, which would allow that to happen. Why might a president or former president want to remove the venue from a state district case to a federal jurisdiction?
Well, the hallmark of federal judges as opposed to state judges is they're appointed for life with the advice and consent of the Senate, whereas state judges are generally elected. And so they're more political creatures by nature. They wear the robes of legislators to a certain extent because they do have to stand for election. So you hope to get the neutrality the political independence from a federal court.
In your experience, does the jury selection process, is that more robust at the federal level than it is at the state, generally speaking?
Yeah, absolutely. The voir dire is much more extensive. The judge controls that process much more in terms of making sure abuses don't take place. So yeah, I would assume that in general, the federal judicial process is much tighter and less loosey-goosey, I guess is the way I'd put it, than a state process.
Thank you, Ms. Foley. See, my time has expired, Mr. Chairman, soon to be governor of North Dakota, and with that, I yield.